you. This is also a live webinar. It's going worldwide, so at the end there'll be a chance for some questions and answers. And you're seeing a document up here I'm going to talk about in some length of what has happened over the last 7 or 8 years with the French Ministry of Defense. And the irony of being the head of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and the founder of the Global Disclosure Movement is that since that date, I've been sitting on the most important government document in the history of the UFO subject, but didn't feel I could share it because I didn't want to burn bridges to the Sarkozy regime and the Ministry of Defense officials working with the French government at that time. I feel at this point enough water has passed under the bridge that I can share it, so that's why I'm sharing it here in London and worldwide, and soon it will be up on our website. And that's why the French Ministry of Defense contacted us, just the same reason that the intelligence community in the United States did so. They were extremely interested in how is contact made, and they vowed to embark on a long-term journey to do just that, for peaceful purposes. This is why this is, we'll go through this in a moment, this is the most important document ever written from a government entity. And the attachment is even more astonishing, which is an attachment of all the protocols to be used as contact is made and how it's evaluated, with the full resources of the Ministry of Defense of France. Why is that important? Because it's a baby step of a major country doing something that should have happened in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, had there not been a complete subversion by covert military interests, which Eisenhower, the President of the United States, and a 5-star general warned us about. And you're going to have to encourage the government to try to begin to catch up with what the French are doing, and which a government I cannot discuss because it's a negotiation and process is about to launch on, but it's one of the most important countries in the world, not American or UK or French. You can go guess. There are a few. So, and also they're wanting to push hard on bringing out the technologies. Now, we hope their prime minister doesn't get assassinated trying. So when the French first approached me, I'm giving you this background so there's some context of understanding why and how this happened. They first contacted us through some very prominent French diplomats, and who said to me, look, you know, we're very interested in pursuing this for peaceful purposes, because I made it very clear I would not be involved in an operation that militarized the contact or had any weapon systems on site or involved, except to keep the bad guys away from us, including radar systems, air support, naval support, ground forces, special forces. And that's what I requested. And they said, fine, we'll do it. And what ended up happening is that they were gathering information on what was really going on the subject in the United States, and to an extent, indirectly, in the UK. And they found out, of course, something that they didn't think was possible, because it sounds like a bad John le Carré novel. And I said, well, let me answer your question with a question. What would you have done if you found that there was an illegal, super secret, unacknowledged special access project, transnational, not international, transnational, transects geopolitical boundaries, that is sitting on the technologies that would give us a new civilization without poverty or pollution, that they have enforced the secrecy through murder, mayhem, lies, deception, and intimidation, up to and including high officials in governments, both governments, including your government. And what was beautiful about this is that even after explaining all this to the Ministry of Defense officials and their Air Force folks and intelligence officials in France, well, the first thing they said was, this is fantastic and terrible, when I explained the nature of secrecy in the United States, United Kingdom, and many other countries. And they said, but then if they said, well, I don't know how much we can do, we'll do what we can. As soon as they faxed me information about what they wanted to do with our team to go and make contact, they got a call. Their ambassador from France to the United States got a rather nasty call, irate, and said, what the hell do you think you're doing? And the ambassador from France to the United States said, well, we're planning to initiate this research project, but also a peaceful rapprochement with these interstellar visitors in a scientific but a visionary way. And we're cooperating with Dr. GREER and his team to do so. And the intelligence folks in the U.S. on the other side say, just stay away from any U.S. assets in any U.S. territory. And the guy said, look, it'll be on French soil, so bug off. And that's how that conversation went. But so there were all manner of delays, which when you see the translation of this letter, you'll see it, the Admiral Morin is apologizing for the delays because there was all this interference going on. You don't step onto this stage without, I mean, you're going to, you know, anyway, you're going to have the whole thing coming at you like a freight train, which we have. But the French stayed true to their purpose, and we eventually did a fantastic CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind event. Now, was anyone there in France in 2010 or 11? Yeah? Most people don't know that they were there to be trained, but it was actually an event for the Admiral and the Ministry of Defense. So they piggybacked their, is this disturbing or interesting? I don't know which. Well, this is the way I have to do things. They wanted to be discreet. So they piggybacked their Admiral and their systems on a public CE5. And of course, they were there sitting in plaid shirts and looked like just regular Frenchmen. But the whole area, we're on a 2,200-acre estate, was cordoned off. And you'll see a photograph from a trans-dimensional ET vehicle that blipped in and blipped out very quickly there. But they tracked objects going over the site in excess of 200,000 kilometers an hour. And all kinds of phenomena in the field, weird things, like something you see on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, we had the cars parked in a hayfield and some interstellar trans-dimensional energy form went up and down the cars and turned the lights on and off, did all kinds of strange things. So they were very, very pleased with that. And so then they've sort of gone on from there. But the idea, just the idea that a Ministry of Defense official at this level, very senior admiral, and his team working at the highest levels of the French government would say, we want to pursue interstellar and intergalactic contact for peaceful purposes. This is huge news. This is an enormous development. You know, the superlatives really can't reach it, just the idea that they'd go this far, and that they try it, and that they came, and that there's still operations going on, but they're keeping very quiet about it. Part of it is that there are elements of this so-called majestic group, MJ12. It's actually the Majority Committee on Intelligence. You know, that's really what it stands for. That was founded decades ago. Have representation in France and also in French industry, and there's been a lot of pressure to cease and desist in France, as there would be against anyone in your government who initiated it. But at a certain point, can't we get together behind these folks and say, we're going to do it, and we're not going to be intimidated, and we're not going to be stopped, because it's time for us to go into this future that is peaceful and universal, and allow the public to know in an open CE5 event. This demonstration event in France was just a demonstration event for them. But eventually I see in the future, and I've had very lucid dreams of the future, where there's absolutely open contact with the full cooperation of governments and the military around the world, where they realize what a mistake they made making this secret, and what a mistake they've made creating an adversarial dynamic between humans and these interstellar civilizations. So I see that happening, and this was the first major crack in that wall, of not only silence, but of stupidity. The stupidity of a militaristic approach to something that should never have been militarized. Never should have been militarized. So that is all a process that they needed to know before they stepped into this. Now, I wasn't trying to scare them off, although I may have a bit, because it caused a few-year delay. But I wanted them, in medicine we call it informed consent. And I wasn't going to lie when they asked me what kind of security risks would there be to us doing this. I said, well, first of all, the people keeping the secret transnational. They have representations, covert, deep cover in your country. They have technologies like you cannot believe. And they have reconnaissance over France that will know everything you're doing in real time. So nothing will really be done secretly. So that you factor into bake that into the cake from the get-go. And they went, oh, mon Dieu, you know. And I said, yeah, okay, so it doesn't mean we can't do it, but be aware. So it became this cat and mouse thing to set this event up, that apparently there was a woman here who was there, and some other people I know. They had to set up a security perimeter, a radar perimeter, divert air traffic, everything for this event. These 3 nights in the Brittany on a 2,200 acre estate that had been part of a family who ironically helped organize the French Revolution, like my mom's family did in America, but who also specifically organized the beheading of Marie Antoinette. Some very interesting vibes at this estate. Anyway, but welcome to my world, a little strange. But anyway, and that is why I say this was one of the most important initiatives. So let's scroll down if we can see. I'll get my laser pointer and just point out a few. I know most of you don't read French. I certainly don't. I'm a medical doctor where they say it's equivalent to learning 4 foreign languages. So, not yet, but we'll just so up at the top. Can you see the red pointer? So this is Dr. Pierre Morin, who's an admiral, who's with the Ministry of Defense, urgent, 16 January 2007. It was also copied to a group that is working with the Ministry of Defense for making contact. It was primarily addressed to me and our host at the estate, Philippe Aubin, and his brother who owned this massive estate in France. So as you scroll down, you'll see the signature and the seal for the Ministry of Defense. Now, if we go to the translation, I'm not going to read through all this. This will be up on the website soon enough. We had someone just recently do a better translation than what we had that I showed in Lisbon, interestingly, which we'll pull up here in a moment. You'll see that the first parts of it are dealing with sort of an apology for the delay. And the delay is the backstory I was telling you about. They had to gather all this intelligence about what they were facing and what kind of countermeasures they might encounter from the American/British/MAGIC, M-A-J-I-C committee. So that's why the French Ministry of Defense assured its presence for the test attempted contacts beginning the 4th week of this year. They wanted to do it in 2007. It ended up happening, I think, 2010, wasn't it? 2010, my friend who was there. Apology on behalf of the Ministry of Defense for this temporary inconvenience. It's only a temporary delay, and we request all participants to postpone the meeting. The initial CE5 event was going to be in the 20. It's very interesting. It would have been in the summer of 2007. Due to short-term political imperatives, the MOD is obliged to request the participants concerned with the feasibility operation reported the test and contacts be scheduled for the 24th and 25th of this year. This is worded awkwardly, but the actual original is worded awkwardly. The full determination and active collaboration of the MOD at its highest level regarding the entrance of France and its scientific community. And this is an amazing statement. This is addressed to me. By the way, it's not classified, so I can share it. I've just been not sharing it because, again, I wanted to give them time to sort things out. The protocol of reciprocity, meaning with the ETs, of acquired knowledge during the rescheduled experiments of the signing officers in close connection with SPORAD, which is a research group that there's an attached document I'll show you in a moment that's, I don't know, 20 pages long about the protocols. Will supply all necessary means of materials, human resources, and financial support. This protocol will be based on 4 categories of specifications in coordination with the needs and efforts according to your recommendations with the support of the MOD. identification of the source of the ET UFO object, procedure and recognition, biological, physiochemical, relative fields, and miscellaneous language, laser signaling, and things of this sort. I don't know what MFP means. Quality of the source, to document the quality of the source, biological if possible, in relation with the validation of our entries and context made this category critical. Availability of the source, this category regroups the fields regarding the contact possibilities and future exploitation of the above mentioned. The collaboration of the delegation representation of the Ministry of Defense with its full technical backing requires the agreement from each party on the process, analysis, specification, concept, implementation, necessary means for exploring the scientific results. These results must allow us to conclude in a performance evaluation system in the advanced framework of the more action models regarding the objectives brought through your experimental proposition and the electronic and optical means you wish to use that we accept to put in your disposal during your stay in France. So I had sent a very exhaustive list of the material, what we needed to have in place, the security perimeter, the radar monitoring, the air traffic control diversion, on and on and on. My document is another huge document, which actually ought to be released with this one, shouldn't it? Just thought of that. Make a note, Emily. All right, we'll dig it up out of our archives. The basement of my house is like a very interesting vault. Besides the fact that our imperatives forbid us to take part during the 2 coming weeks. See, we were going to do it in those 2 coming weeks. The request, the means of putting at your disposal in absence of all circumstantial recommendations did not allow us to account to our superiors with all the required scientific certainty and to engage a process of long-term exchange on this experimental field with you. What this is trying to say is that the delay was because they couldn't get everyone else on board to do it in '07. So that's why it got pushed to 2010. In the hope of your understanding and respect for our political imperative. So there are a lot of arms being twisted here. You can read between the lines. That will become a certain commitment and our will hereby affirm to proceed on an exhaustive journey with you on this topic. We will be able to erase the disappointment of the postponement of the first contact that was going to happen at the end of this month. That was in January. On behalf of our representative, I'm pleased to wish you all the best for this coming year and outstanding results for our 2 countries. So, of course, I'm American. So, obviously, this was intercepted by the National Security Agency, and that's when the ambassador to the United States from France got this rather nasty contact. So, this is such an amazing sort of paradigm shift that a Ministry of Defense. So if the French could contemplate doing this at this level, and this was at the highest level, as it said, including political, meaning that the President of France, Sarkozy, why can't it happen in the UK? Why not? You need to break with the Americans on this. And not with the American government, because the American government would be on board with the secret, illegal, corrupt kleptocracy of petro-Nazis and fascists that are running the world amok. You guys need to get your government to do this. Why not? All right? Help me do this in Great Britain. By the way, we have several hundred hours of this stuff. I'm trying to go to France here, 2010, Purple Field. So this is when the Admiral and all those folks were there. And we're gathering to do this puja, and this object that looks like a big bubble smoke, and this is me pointing, and you can see how I'm pointing, and everyone's turning around because an object had just gone very quickly, and this weird purpley mauve thing is there. Now it's not quite fully materialized, but it's hovering above the ground just partially in this dimension. And the way it was first seen was almost like if you had a massive soap bubble that had all the colors in it, that just flashes in, flashes out. And people went, what was that? It was seen and felt by everyone looking that way. And this is fascinating.
My name is Carol Rasen. I'm an educator who became the first woman corporate manager of an aerospace company, Fairchild Industries. I'm a space and missile defense consultant. I've consulted to a number of companies, organizations, government departments, even the intelligence community. When I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. Von Braun had a history of working with weapons systems and had escaped from Peenemünde to come to this country and landed as vice president of Fairchild Industries when I had met him. Von Braun's purpose in life during the last years of his life, his dying years, was to educate the public and decision makers about why space-based weapons are a dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, unworkable, undesirable idea, and about the alternatives that are available. And as practically a deathbed speech, he educated me about those concepts and who the players were in this game, and gave me the responsibility, since he was dying, of continuing this effort to prevent the weaponization of outer space. In 1977, I was at a meeting in Fairchild Industries in a conference room called the War Room. And in that room were a lot of charts on the walls with enemies, identified enemies, names that people had never heard of, names like Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. But we were talking then about terrorists, the potential terrorists. No one had ever talked about this before, but this was the next stage after the Russians against whom we were going to build space-based weapons, these terrorists. And I stood up in this meeting and I said, excuse me, why are we talking about these potential enemies against whom we're going to build space-based weapons if in fact we know that they are not the enemy at this time? And they continued the conversation about how they were going to antagonize these enemies, and that at some point there was going to be a war in the Gulf, a Gulf War. Now this is 1977. This is 1977. And they were talking about creating a war in the Gulf region when there was $25 billion in the space-based weapons program that yet had not been identified. It wasn't called the Strategic Defense Initiative, at least, until 1983. This weapons system then had obviously been going on for some time that I didn't know anything about. Wernher von Braun gave me the assignment of preventing the weaponization of outer space from happening. But what he said to me over and over again was that his real concern, his greatest concern, was about psychotronic weapons.
Did he discuss what those were?
No. He didn't discuss what they were, but he repeated over and over to me that this was the real concern. This is what we should really be concerned about. But he would add, the public, however, won't understand that yet. So let's just call for the ban on space-based weapons. That can be understood, it can be measured, it can be done. And once you have a ban on space-based weapons, you've put a lid on the arms race. People have become aware, they've become connected consciously, and they will begin to understand that there are alternatives. But his real concern, the biggest concern he had, was about the psychotronic weapons. Those are mind-controlled weapons, mind-controlled people or technology. Very dangerous weapons.
Welcome to Truth Jihad Radio. I'm Kevin Barrett, waging the Truth Jihad, bringing on great guests, talking about all the issues that you're not supposed to talk about in polite company, even in the mainstream media. Today we're going to bring up a hot-button issue that hardly ever gets covered even in the alternative media, and that is electronic harassment, gang stalking. It's a scary issue, and if you talk about it, they're going to say that you're wearing a tinfoil hat. They're going to come after you, and And that kind of suggests to me that, whenever you're not supposed to talk about something, and when you do talk about it, you get the usual insults from the usual suspects, that means that maybe that's a subject that needs to be talked about. And that's the assumption I'm bringing into today's interview. I'm going to be talking to Peter Mooring. Welcome, Peter Mooring. How are you?
Welcome, Kevin. Thank you for having me on your program.
But, this kind of stuff that you're looking into is so extreme. Some of these people apparently, if they're telling the truth, if their picture is accurate, they're really being brutally mistreated with these kinds of weapons. Is it mostly just experimentation, or are they actually using this stuff on dissidents or people that they want to take out?
Yeah, you have of course different groups of people. You have the whistleblowers and the activists, people who are opposed to certain companies, big companies, hackers who hack into certain systems and show that the security is totally useless, like hacking into a pacemaker, for example. So that's a group of people who is certainly targeted. Most of these people, I think, they will experience certain things at a certain time, but their lives really are, well, you can say, destroyed in such a way that they are made financially broke, so they cannot have any finance. So that makes it very difficult for them to start activism, to do new activism. And then you have this other group of people that is just, they call it the targeted individuals. These are the people who are really experimented upon. All these new high-tech weapon systems must be developed, and you need real people to test them on. So, and that's really horrific. Yeah.
Right. I've discussed this kind of thing a little bit with the Veterans Today editor Gordon Duff. I'm an editor there, and he's quite interested in weaponry. He's a gunsmith and so on. This is very insidious because the more you try to stop it by being transparent and talking openly about it, the worse it makes you look. You look like a tinfoil hat, paranoid conspiracy nut. Gordon Duff has, described this as he says this is the Cat Kidnapping Scenario. We always joked about this, in the CIA, they say, what's that, Gordon? He said, well, if you want to go after somebody, what you do is you land a black helicopter on their lawn. And then you got, 4 guys jump out of the black helicopter, all dressed in black ninja outfits and ski masks. And they kick in the door and they charge past you. You're sitting there in the living room freaking out, and they just ignore you, and they grab your cat. They take your cat out to the helicopter and they fly away. And so now, if you were to call the newspaper or the police and say, these guys in black ninja outfits in a black helicopter just landed on my lawn and came in and took my cat, nobody's ever going to believe anything you say again. So that's one of the problems here. How do we discuss this rationally? There were means used that were not using kind of conventional technologies. What he was describing sounds almost like some kind of psychic technology or some form of energy technology that's not in conventional science that they teach in the universities. Have you heard of anything like that? That there are forms of covert harassment that maybe you're not using normal electronics?
Well, that's very difficult. I mean, of course, I've been to university and studied electronics and all these things, and I'm pretty sure that I have not learned everything there is to know. For example, all this Tesla technology.
And yet, don't we have a world in which there are all sorts of people out there fighting the power and causing problems for all of the various powerful people? Or is that an illusion? Or is everybody who even threatens to really cause them a problem taken out quickly?
I think everybody who's really hitting the truth will be taken out. That's certainly true. And these weapons based on radio waves are perfect tools to do that. I mean, they can give you a heart attack in your home. They can give you a heart attack when you're on a bicycle, when you're running. There was a number of years ago when Sarkozy was president of France. He said something which was bad for the United States, and Sarkozy did always running. And a few days later, he suddenly was hit by some heart attack. He fell down on the ground when he was running, and he was taken to a hospital, but they couldn't find anything. I mean, this is all, it has become so easy to eliminate or incapacitate, maybe just for a short time, people. With these weapons are wonder weapons, you can say.
So there are a lot of arms being twisted here. You can read between the lines.
I think everybody who's really hitting the truth will be taken out.
The public, however, won't understand that yet.
Like some kind of psychic technology.
The psychotronic weapon.
President of France, Sarkozy. And also they're wanting to push hard on bringing out the technologies. Now, we hope their prime minister doesn't get assassinated trying. That they have enforced the secrecy through murder, mayhem, lies, deception, and intimidation, up to and including high officials in governments, both governments, including your government. So there are a lot of arms being twisted here. You can read between the lines.
I think everybody who's really hitting the truth will be taken out.
The public, however, won't understand that yet.
Like some kind of psychic technology.
The psychotronic weapon.
President of France, Sarkozy. So there are all manner of delays, which when you see the translation of this letter, you'll see it, the Admiral Morin is apologizing for the delays because there's all this interference going on. You don't step onto this stage without, I mean, you're going to, you know, anyway, you're going to have the whole thing coming at you like a freight train. So there are a lot of arms being twisted here. You can read between the lines.
I think everybody who's really hitting the truth will be taken out.
The public, however, won't understand that yet.
Like some kind of psychic technology.
The psychotronic weapon.
President of France, Sarkozy. There's been a lot of pressure to cease and desist in France, as there would be against anyone in your government who initiated it. The first parts of it are dealing with sort of an apology for the delay. And the delay is the backstory I was telling you about.
The public, however, won't understand that yet.
Like some kind of psychic technology.
The psychotronic weapon.
What this is trying to say is that the delay was because they couldn't get everyone else on board to do it in 2007. So there are a lot of arms being twisted here. You can read between the lines. Why can't it happen in the UK? Why not? You need to break with the Americans on this. And not with the American government, because the American government would be on board with the secret, illegal, corrupt kleptocracy of petro-Nazis and fascists that are running the world amok. You guys need to get your government to do this. Why not? All right? Help me do this in Great Britain. The problem is not proving that UFOs exist. It's when you begin to expose the energy and propulsion systems behind how they're getting here.
What scientists need to do is they need to look at the hardcore evidence, decide that, oh my gosh, ETs are real, and then get over that. Then you can start extrapolating.
These sciences have been around for decades. They have been ruthlessly kept secret because of the power of a centralized petrodollar, oil, gas, coal system. And right now these misanthropic sociopaths are running the planet into the ground.
Governments have not gone far enough. So we've decided that as people to form our own movement.
What we are attempting to achieve is a device which defeats the perpendicular force of gravity.
We have so many modes of converting quantum vacuum energy or zero-point energy.
This possible EVE was found in the Atacama Desert. We have the best scientists that are going to be doing the DNA testing.
We have 1,150 teams of CE5 ambassadors.
I can attest to the fact that real phenomenon happens here.
And this is probably the most important thing going on this planet today, and yet nobody talks about it.
portée de nos ailes, harmonie dont jamais on ne se lasse. Tu verras, viens prends place.
If we come together, we can make this happen in a matter of months, not decades. For this is the destiny of humanity.